My name is Valerie, 12 years. That's how long I gave Novalink. I was there when we were just 10 people in a co-working space with sticky floors and a coffee machine that only worked if you kicked it. I was there when we pitched our first client, when we missed payroll, when we finally landed Series A. I built our brand from the ground up, naming, voice, campaigns, all of it. So when the company announced a major product launch, the biggest in our history, I poured myself into it. For 9 months, it was my everything. I curated the theme, designed the visuals, coordinated the venue, vetted every line of copy. And then, 3 days before the launch party, I was summoned to an urgent restructuring meeting at 8 a.m. sharp. The conference room felt colder than usual. Kevin from HR sat there looking like he practiced his fake sympathy in the mirror. Next to him, our new CEO, Daniel Harper, all crisp suit and corporate lingo, folded his hands like he was about to offer me a raise. "Valerie," he began, "thanks for coming in. We'll get straight to it. As part of our streamlining initiative, your role as Director of Brand Strategy is being phased out. Just like that. No warning, no gratitude. Just phased out, like I was old software." I didn't react. I didn't blink. Because 3 weeks earlier, I had stayed late to grab my charger and spotted an email left open on Daniel's screen. "Valerie off the launch list. Replacement confirmed." That was the subject line. It had been written a full month before. They ever invited me to that meeting? So no, I wasn't shocked. I was prepared. I sat there letting them recite the prepackaged phrases. "Appreciate your contributions. Realigning for efficiency. Wish you the best." And all I could think about was the irony. I had designed the entire event they were now uninviting me from. They thought they were blindsiding me. What they didn't know is I'd already started documenting everything. Because when you're a woman in tech with a long memory and a backup drive, they might erase your name from the guest list, but not from the story. I didn't cry. I didn't scream. I went home, took off my blazer, made a cup of coffee I didn't drink, and opened my laptop. Then I started pulling everything: years of work, strategy decks, pitch documents, copy drafts, creative briefs, email threads. Slides I'd stayed up past midnight to polish. Naming conventions I had brainstormed on napkins during lunch breaks. Campaigns that had generated 6-figure revenue spikes and won awards no one remembered to put my name on. I had saved it all. Maybe because some part of me always knew that the applause was temporary, but the receipts were forever. As I archived everything, something inside me shifted. Not rage, not grief, just a sharp, steady kind of clarity. For 12 years, they had treated my brain like a corporate vending machine. Press a button, get ideas. No acknowledgement, no equity, just "Great job, Valerie," and the expectation that I'd do it again next quarter. I used to tell myself that was okay, that being behind the curtain didn't mean I wasn't valued, that being the quiet force made me indispensable. But that illusion cracked wide open in that conference room. They didn't hesitate. They didn't flinch. They just pulled the plug like I was a software license they forgot to renew. It made me realize how easily we confuse loyalty with impact. I thought if I worked hard enough, stayed late enough, held the team together long enough, someone would eventually say, "We couldn't have done this without you." But the truth is, when you make it look easy, people stop believing it was ever hard. When you carry too much without complaint, they start assuming the weight was never that heavy. I remembered the time I pitched a bold rebrand to our largest client, something the sales director called too risky. We did it anyway. The client loved it. It became a case study. The sales director got promoted. I got a Starbucks gift card. Or the quarterly meeting where my deck was used by the CMO, verbatim, but my name was scrubbed from the footer. They called it teamwork, but it wasn't just Novalink. It was the culture, the kind that tells women to share credit, but never ensures they get any. That calls us emotional when we speak up and difficult when we don't just nod along. That replaces us the moment we stop smiling through the disrespect. So I stopped waiting for someone to see my worth, and I started preparing to own it. Because if there's one thing I've learned, it's that silence doesn't protect you. It just makes it easier for them to pretend you were never there. And I wasn't going to let that happen. Not this time. Not after everything I had built. 9 months earlier, long before I ever saw the email that sealed my fate, I had pitched a new branding concept during a Friday brainstorm. It wasn't just another visual theme, it was a full identity system. Tagline, typography, user flow language, narrative voice. The kind of creative overhaul that could carry a product for years. They loved it. At the time, I didn't even think twice. I refined it over the weekend, on my own time, using my personal software, on my personal device. Just a habit, really. But after that conference room ambush, that habit turned out to be a lifeline, because I had quietly filed for copyright. Entire brand identity. Under my name, legal, verifiable, clean. Not company-owned, not created under their directive. I had the time-stamped project folder, the proposal PDF with my solo signature, the metadata, the email thread to Kevin in marketing, with the subject line, "New pitch, just a rough draft, not final." And the beautiful part? They ran with it. They took the draft, turned it into gospel, and built the entire product launch around it, never once formalizing ownership. Not once updating the attribution. So I did what they never expected me to do. I got organized. I started compiling. A dossier, neatly structured, fully indexed, cold and clinical. Internal calendars showing when I presented the branding. Slack messages between product and marketing praising Val's direction. Feedback notes, prototype screenshots, voice memos, asset drafts. All under my creative folder, all marked with revision history. At the bottom of the pile, a copy of the federal copyright registration, filed 8 months ago. Then I packaged everything into a single devastating document. I called it Launch Gift, Valerie PDF. It wasn't angry. It wasn't emotional. It was bulletproof, and then I scheduled it. Email set to go out to Daniel Harper, our buzzword-loving CEO, every member of the board, Lucas Lynn, the lead investor from Kinetic Capital, and 3 respected tech journalists I had met over the years who still remembered the work I did when Novalink was just a blip on the radar. Delivery time, 9:30 p.m., exactly 20 minutes after Daniel's scripted toast at the launch party. As I pressed schedule, I didn't feel vengeance. I felt precision. They erased me from the narrative. Fine, I'd just remind them, on the loudest night of their careers, who actually wrote the story. The launch party was held at the Skyview Grand, one of those glass-walled venues with skyline. Views and too many people pretending to be more important than they are. I arrived on time, wearing a black satin blouse, tailored blazer, and the kind of expression that made people unsure whether to say hello or keep their distance. My name wasn't on the guest list, of course, but no one stopped me. That's the magic of being dismissed too soon. They forget to lock the doors behind you. The ballroom was buzzing. PR reps clinking glasses, interns scrambling over last minute, seating changes, and Daniel Harper grinning like he'd invented oxygen. Everything I'd created was on display. The brand visuals, the lighting, the taglines stretched across massive screens. More than innovation, it's identity. I almost laughed. They hadn't even changed the words. At 9:09 p.m., Daniel stepped onto the stage. He held up a champagne, flute with that smug charisma reserved for men who've never built a damn thing themselves. "Everything you see here," he said, voice booming, "is thanks to our incredible team. Every sleepless night, every spark of creativity, well, except for the dead weight we let go along the way, There was a pause. A few uncomfortable chuckles. Some eyes glanced toward me. I walked toward the stage. Not rushed, not dramatic. Just steady heels across polished marble. He hesitated. As I approached, but didn't stop me. I handed him a plain white envelope. "What's this?" he asked, still half smiling. I leaned in slightly, just enough for the nearby mics to catch it. "Your launch gift. From the person who actually built this." Then I turned and walked out of the ballroom, heels clicking like punctuation. I didn't look back. At exactly 9:30 p.m., the emails were delivered to Daniel, to the board, to Lucas Lynn, to every journalist on that list. The file opened with proof of authorship, legal ownership, and a formal cease and desist from my lawyer. The subject line read, "Use of copyrighted brand identity without license. Immediate action required." The first alert came at 9:33 p.m. Someone leaked it to Twitter. A journalist posted a screenshot of the certificate. By 9:35 p.m., Lucas Lynn was calling the board directly. By 9:40 p.m., the music was still playing, but the mood had curdled. Faces turned pale. Phones buzzed like alarms. The launch, streamed, live to press and investors, began to unravel in real time. I was already outside, sliding into the back seat of a car my attorney had sent. Phone in hand, I watched it unfold, and as messages poured in, "What did you do?" "They're panicking." Daniel stormed off stage. I didn't smile. I didn't gloat. I just sat in the dark and thought, this isn't revenge. This is recognition arriving fashionably late. A week after the launch party imploded, my inbox was still a minefield. Investors looking for off-the-record insight. Recruiters dangling vague promises. Reporters chasing a follow-up quote. But the message that caught my eye was from Aisha Rahman, CEO of Viora AI. Subject line, "We should talk. I think you'll like what we're building." That name wasn't random. Aisha was legendary in our industry. Not because she played it safe, but because she didn't. She'd been pushed out of a Fortune 100 company years ago for being too aggressive in her vision. In other words, she was brilliant and refused to shrink. We met at a quiet rooftop cafe, no PR teams, no handlers, just two women with scars and stories. She didn't start with small talk. She looked me in the eye and said, "I know exactly what they did to you. They tried it with me, too. So I built something better, and I want you to help me grow it." She offered me the position of Vice President of Brand Strategy and Innovation at Viora. Full creative authority, equity on the table, and a blank canvas to build from. But what sold me wasn't the title. It was what she said next. "You don't have to fight for your seat at this table. It already has your name on it." I accepted that same afternoon. Within days, I was onboarding, not just into a role, but into a culture that didn't mistake silence for professionalism or ego for leadership. And I wasn't alone. Miguel, who had quietly warned me the night of the launch party, resigned from Novalink and joined Viora. So did Priya from UX, and Evan from Data Analytics, two of the smartest people I'd ever worked with, both constantly undercredited back at Novalink. We weren't rebuilding the past. We were creating an ecosystem where people's contributions were visible, where credit wasn't hoarded at the top, and where talent wasn't treated like a tool to be used and discarded. My first week at Viora felt like breathing real air after years of holding it in. I led the strategy for an upcoming product designed to make AI explainable, not just functional. And for the first time in years, my ideas weren't too ambitious. They were expected. I didn't have to document every meeting in fear. I didn't have to second-guess every presentation title. I could just build. And as we sat in our new office space, open plan but warm, with whiteboards covered in possibility, I realized this wasn't just a comeback. It was a beginning. One I authored entirely on my own terms. I hadn't planned to, post anything. But late one night, 2 weeks into my new role at Viora, I opened LinkedIn and started typing. I didn't name names. I didn't vent. I just told the truth. 12 years of loyalty, erased in 3 pages of legalese, and the quiet decision to protect what was mine. I ended it with one line. When they stopped seeing my value, I didn't get loud. I got legal. By morning, it had exploded. Over 10,000 reactions, thousands of comments, hundreds of messages from women across industries. Some whispered their own war stories. Others just said thank you. A few wrote, "You gave me permission to speak up." Meanwhile, Novalink was on fire! Their stock dropped 8% in 48 hours. Press picked up the IP scandal. Screenshots of my copyright filing were being shared across Twitter. The phrase, "Don't Valerie your creatives," became a quiet rallying cry in branding circles. Then came the real headline: CEO Andrew Harper steps down amid launch controversy. The board tried to spin it as unrelated. No one bought it. 1 week later, Novalink issued a formal statement acknowledging that the brand identity used at launch had been developed by me, pre-dismissal, and would now be used under license. They credited me publicly and announced internal reviews to ensure proper creative attribution moving forward. It wasn't poetic, but it was on record, and this time, they spelled my name right. The same day, Viora made an announcement of their own. Valerie Nguyen, Chief Brand and Innovation Officer. I stared at that title for a long time. Not because it meant power, but because it meant ownership. My name was no longer in the margins. It was the header. I didn't toast. I didn't dance. I just stood in the quiet, heart steady, and finally let the truth land. They hadn't broken me. They'd built my platform. There's a small wooden frame on the wall of my office. It hangs above the couch, not too obvious, but always in view. Inside is a piece of cream paper, handwritten in black ink. Not revenge, just record. It's not for decoration. It's not for anyone else. It's a quiet memorial to every time I was overlooked, overwritten, or expected to disappear. People love stories of fiery revenge. They expect screaming, slammed doors, public takedowns. That wasn't me. I didn't torch the building on my way out. I simply took back what I built and made sure they had to ask for permission to use it. When I left Novalink, they assumed I'd go quietly. And I did. But what they didn't understand was that silence, when intentional, can be louder than any speech. They filled the launch room with lights and noise, but all anyone could talk about was the voice that wasn't there. At Viora, I don't have to keep receipts out of fear anymore, but I still document, not out of paranoia, but principle. Because memory fades and narratives bend, but proof remains. Every time I pass that frame, I'm reminded, this wasn't about revenge. It was about reclaiming narrative, protecting authorship, saying I was here, and this mattered. To every woman reading this who's ever been called difficult, too emotional, or replaceable, let me say this. Document everything. Know your value. Speak with your actions. Let them underestimate you. That's always step 1 in your greatest advantage. And when the silence finally breaks, make sure it's on your terms. If you've ever been considered invisible in your own family, comment, "I'm still here," below. Don't forget to like and subscribe to the channel, because here, all your stories are heard.